So Mark Homer, one of the founders of Progressive Property, and Kevin McDonnell, one of my fellow trainers at Progressive, and also Kieran, who works for Progressive Lets, they recently had a discussion about the Renters Reform Bill, and you can actually watch that discussion on this YouTube channel. They made some really good points. I think for more sophisticated property investors, the Renters Reform Bill isn't going to present a huge problem. I think it is going to cause a problem for less knowledgeable property investors. So that's where serviced accommodation comes to the fore, but I'll talk about that more later in this video. But first off, let's talk about my issues with the Renters Reform Bill. I think the consensus on the Renters Reform Bill is keep calm, carry on. I'm more inclined to be wary of the Renters Reform Bill. One of the things that the Renters Reform Bill is likely to bring in is that tenants immediately have what's called a statutory periodic tenancy agreement, which means ultimately they can give notice and leave 2 months later. So that's going to open up a scenario where tenants could game the system. Let's give you some scenarios. Let's say somebody just wants to rent a property for a couple of months because they're having some home improvements done. Well, they wouldn't in the past be able to do that just for a couple of months, paying the normal single let rate. They would have to take a property on at least a 6-month AST. But now they could literally just not tell the owner of the property that they only intend to stay for a couple of months, move in, give notice, and then they're gone. And then the owner's got the void and they've got to re-let the property and all of those issues and all of those hassles. Another way that tenants could game this, somebody might have sold their house, but their new house isn't ready to be moved into. They could go and just take on a property and literally only stay for a couple of months and leave the owner in the lurch as well. Let's talk about HMOs. So what students do is they will take the property on a year's contract. What happens when this contract is gone and they go straight onto a statutory periodic? Well, they might find somewhere else and literally give notice and they are gone as well, leaving the owner completely in the lurch because they've got an HMO and they have no students in for that year. Letting agents will always tell people, no, you can't rent a property from me for only 2, 3, 4 months. They're not going to be able to stop people doing that with this new statutory periodic agreement that comes in. When they say you're not allowed to disallow pets, again, that's going to cause a lot of landlords to have an issue with that. I've been a landlord for many, many years, and often I've had properties back that have been completely trashed by the owner's pets. You know, pets start off small, they get bigger. I had a property back once where I found out that the owner had 5 Rottweilers in the property. It was just a terraced property. There's lots of parts of the Renters Reform Bill. Another one is they're removing the Section 21. The Section 21 was where you could just give 2 months notice and get your property back. You didn't need to give a reason why you wanted your property back. You could just give 2 months notice. Whereas the Renters Reform Bill is going to remove the Section 21 and only leave you with what's called a Section 8, and there has to be some very, very, very compelling reasons why the owner wants to get their property back, like they're moving in, their financial hardship, they've got to sell it or something like that. But let's say you want the property back because the tenant is antisocial, the tenant is being rude to you or rude and antisocial to neighbours or other tenants if it's like a HMO. And let's say the tenant decides not to leave because they disagree that they have been committing antisocial behaviour. So if they don't leave, then it has to go to court. And then as the property owner, you would have to prove conclusively that that tenant has been committing antisocial behaviour. Well, good luck with that, because unless you've got witnesses to testify and proper evidence of antisocial behaviour, it's not going to be proved in court. And in my experience, people are very unlikely to come forward as witnesses to state that another person is aggressive or violent or antisocial or whatever they may be. All that will happen is the case will be thrown out of court and you are back to square one. And there's well over a year's waiting list now to get a court date. Whereas in the past with a Section 21, if you issued that and the tenant did not leave, that in itself would be grounds for possession. You would get the property back if they didn't leave after a Section 21. So I'm afraid there are a lot of problems with this renters reform bill, I actually think it's not going to be good for tenants. I think a lot of landlords are going to sell up. A lot of landlords are just going to say, do you know what, I'm out. And that is going to reduce the amount of rental stock. Yes, it will lower house prices because there'll be more supply. More people will buy and live in the property that they own, but there are plenty of people out there that can't get a mortgage. There are plenty of people that aren't creditworthy. And so they are the people that are going to be stuck in the rental trap, but there will be less rental properties available, which will increase rents, because where there's more demand for something, it increases the price of that thing. So in the long term, I think this is a bad thing for tenants, I really do. Now, for landlords who want to avoid the renters reform bill, then they can just pivot over into service accommodation where you don't have tenants. It doesn't sit inside of the Housing Act, and you can then be cash flowing a lot more money than you were previously as buy-to-let. And I'll tell you another thing, with rent to service accommodation and service accommodation management, you could actually appeal to a landlord and say, well, why don't you give the property to me and I'll manage it for you as service accommodation, instead of handing it over to a letting agent, let's say, and then that landlord will not be under the constraints of that renters reform bill. So as far as I'm concerned, that is a win-win situation. The landlord has got much more peace of mind, property kept in show home condition, all of that good stuff. And we are cash flowing a lot of money from a property that we don't even own. So hopefully you enjoyed that video and my take on the renters reform bill. I've actually created a report that you can download, the link attached to this video, where you can learn more about serviced accommodation, which ultimately is the alternative to the renters reform bill. Make sure that you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. And so from me, Kevin Poneskis, the property soldier, your future needs you, and I'll see you on the next video.